There is a question that most people avoid asking, not because it is difficult, but because it is dangerous. It is a question capable of destroying careers, dreams, ambitions, and even desire to get out of the bed in the morning. The question is simple. What if nothing you do really matters? Think about that for a moment. 100 years from now, nearly everyone you know will be dead. 200 years from now, nobody will likely remember your name. 1,000 years from now, your achievements, your failures, your fears, your degrees, your possessions, and even your photographs will have disappeared. So why continue? Why study? Why work? Why love? Why suffer? Why try? This is not a new question. In fact, it is as old as humanity itself. And nearly 3,000 years ago, a man decided to confront it head-on. That man was the author of Ecclesiastes, one of the books of the Old Testament. And what is most remarkable is that he arrived at a conclusion which, at first glance, seems incredibly depressing, but ultimately became one of the most liberating ideas I have ever encountered, because Ecclesiastes begins almost like a punch to the stomach. Meaningless of meaninglessness. Everything is meaningless. Or, in other translations, vanity of vanities. All is vanity. But perhaps neither of those translations fully captures what the author intended. The word used in the original text conveys the idea of smoke, mist, vapor, something you try to hold on, only to watch it slip through your fingers. This is the first great provocation of Ecclesiastes. Everything that appears solid may not be. Everything that appears permanent may not be. Everything that seems so important today may disappear tomorrow. The most fascinating part is that the author does not begin by offering answers. He does not climb into a pulpit to teach. He does not write like a preacher. He writes like an investigator, like someone who has decided to dedicate his entire life to the search for meaning. And so, he begins testing all the answers that we ourselves tend to seek. First, he searches in wisdom. After all, perhaps the problem of existence is simply ignorance. Perhaps understanding the world more deeply will bring peace. So he accumulates knowledge, learns, observes, studies. But he arrives at an unexpected conclusion. The more he understands reality, the more he becomes aware of its pain. The more clearly he sees, the more contradiction he discovers. And then he writes something profoundly uncomfortable. Whoever increases knowledge increases sorrow, because seeing reality clearly also means seeing everything that is broken within it. Now, notice this. We seek meaning and answers for our doubts and burdens. As we gain experience and begin to see reality with accuracy and truth, we realize that many things in the world are wrong and that we will never be able to change all of them. What remains is the melancholy of wisdom, and we come to accept that we are in this universe merely to contemplate divine creation, not to reshape it. Before we continue, I would like to open a discussion about the existence of God and the nature of our world. This will be a denser section, so I will try to simplify it, because these conclusions will serve as the foundation for this video and the ones that follow this one. Stay with me until the end, and I promise you will leave here with a different perspective. Now, grab a piece of paper, a pen, and let's begin. Look at the screen of the device you are using to watch me right now. What do you see? A phone? A collection of atoms, physical laws, mathematics in action. All of these answers are correct. After all, what we call a phone is made of atoms, which obey physical laws, which can be described through mathematics. But notice something interesting. At no point does one thing cease to be the other. Physics never stops being mathematics. Mathematics never stops being a language that describes patterns. And those patterns never stop being organized ideas. The distinctions we create exist primarily to make understanding easier. In reality, everything remains the same thing, expressing itself through different forms. If we follow this line of reasoning, we will arrive at an interesting conclusion. Everything that exists appears to be part of a single reality. You, Me, the stars, the animals, the oceans, and the objects around us are different manifestations of the same existence. I will call this existence being, represented by the number 1. Everything that is, everything that exists belongs to this domain, but our minds are also capable of conceiving the opposite of being. We can imagine that which does not exist, nothingness, non-being. I represent this idea with the number 0. We now have 2 fundamental concepts: being, which is existence, and non-being, which is the absence of it. Now comes the interesting part. When being relates to itself, it remains being, which is equivalent to dividing 1 by 1. When nothingness relates to being, it remains nothingness, which is equivalent to dividing 0 by 1. When being relates to non-being, this becomes an impossibility because non-being does not exist in relation to being, which explains why it is impossible to divide 1 by 0. But when we try to imagine nothingness related to itself, that is, 0 divided by 0, something curious emerges. Through language itself, non-being no longer points toward absolute absence. It is as though negation begins to negate itself, and when negation negates itself, something appears. In other words, nothingness generates something. Perhaps this is precisely where the origin of everything lies. The observable world emerges when non-being turns upon itself and produces being. And from this transition between 0 and 1 arises what we perceive as change. And from change arises what we call time. This is why I began to see God differently, not as an object within reality, but as that which exists beyond it. That which precedes being, makes being possible, and continues to exist independently of it. The ultimate foundation of existence, the necessary cause of everything that exists, the eternal behind the temporary, the 0 itself from my system. This logical system that I developed bears similarities to several philosophical traditions, such as Catholicism itself, through Saint Thomas Aquina, Unmoved Mover, or even Taoism. However, notice that it is based entirely on reason. Although I am Catholic, I believe that a truth of faith can only be fully embraced if it can also be affirmed through reason, as Aquina himself taught. And that is the purpose of this channel, to improve our lives through logic, philosophy, and faith, because they are all ultimately the same thing. They are mechanisms Christ gave us to reach Him. Whether this perspective is correct or not, I honestly do not know, but it helps me better understand what Ecclesiastes is trying to say when it claims that everything is fleeting. Because perhaps what changes, ages, and disappears is not reality itself, but merely the forms through which it manifests before us. With that in mind, it becomes even clearer how everything is fleeting. Just as Ecclesiastes teaches, we spend our lives trying to change things through knowledge, yet nothing that exists truly changes, because everything remains the same thing underneath. But perhaps meaning is not found in wisdom, perhaps it is found in pleasure, and this is where Ecclesiastes becomes frighteningly modern, because that is exactly the answer our culture offers. We grow up hearing that we will be happy once we have enough money, enough experiences, enough comfort, enough travel, enough freedom. So the author does exactly that. He pursues pleasure without limits. He builds houses, plants gardens, accumulates wealth, hires musicians, surrounds himself with luxury, experiences everything a human being could desire, and when he finally looks back, he realizes something devastating. He is still empty. Something is still missing, because the problem was never our lack of pleasure. The problem was expecting pleasure to solve a question it was never designed to answer. So he tries again, this time through work. Maybe this is it. Maybe meaning lies in building something, in leaving a mark, in creating a legacy. But then a terrible question arises. What happens to everything you build when you die? Maybe someone inherits it. maybe someone destroys it, maybe someone wastes it, maybe nobody even remembers it. Imagine dedicating 40 years of your life to building something only to realize that its final destination is completely beyond your control. Ecclesiastes observes this and concludes that there is something deeply frustrating about this reality. We work so hard, exhaust ourselves so completely, and in the end everything is left in someone else's hands. He says, "Yet, when I considered all that my hands had accomplished and what I had toiled to achieve, I found everything to be meaningless. Chasing after the wind, nothing was gained under the sun. Then I turned my thoughts to wisdom, madness, and folly. For what can the man do who comes after the king? Only what has already been done. I saw that wisdom is better than folly, just as light is better than darkness. The wise have eyes in their heads, while fools walk in darkness. Yet I came to realize that the same fate overtakes them both. Then I said to myself, the fate of the fool will overtake me also. What then have I gained by becoming wise? And I said to myself that this too is meaningless. I also came to hate all the labor in which I had toiled under the sun, because I must leave it to the one who comes after me. And who knows whether that person will be wise or foolish? Yet they will have control over all the fruit of my labor, into which I have poured my skill and effort under the sun. This too is fleeting." It is here that the book begins to feel dangerously contemporary, because it describes a crisis that many people live through today without even realizing it. We believe we will find satisfaction in the next achievement, the next paycheck, the next relationship, the next goal. But when we finally get there, the feeling lasts far less than we expected. Soon another goal appears, then another, like someone chasing the horizon, always believing happiness is just over there, yet never arriving. There is an image in Ecclesiastes that deeply affected me. The author watches rivers flowing into the sea, yet the sea never fills. He watches the sun rise and set, day after day, year after year, generations after generation, while human beings come into existence and pass away. It is an almost cruel image, because we like to think of ourselves as the protagonists of the story, yet the universe seems to continue exactly the same without us. And perhaps that is why Ecclesiastes is so unsettling, because it destroys one of our most cherished delusions, the illusion that we are the center of everything. But the truth is that we are simply part of the flow that constitutes this everything. And whenever we try to alter it, desire something beyond it, or wish it were different, we suffer. Ecclesiastes says, "For who knows what is good for a person during the few and fleeting days of life which pass like a shadow? Who can tell them what will happen under the sun after they are gone?" But this is precisely where the book does something brilliant. After dismantling all the false answers, it begins to rebuild something new. And what it rebuilds is not wealth, not fame, not power, not legacy. It rebuilds presence. For the first time, the author seems to realize that perhaps the question was wrong from the beginning. Perhaps the question is not what will last forever. Perhaps the question is what exists right now. Because there is something strange about human beings. We spend most of our lives living in places that do not exist, either trapped in the past or anxious about the future, but rarely here, now, in this moment. This is why Ecclesiastes repeatedly arrives at what seems like a simple conclusion. Eat your bread, drink your wine, enjoy the fruit of your labor, love the people beside you. Be grateful for the days you have been given. When I read this, I was disappointed. It seemed too simple, too small to answer such enormous questions. But the older I get, the more profound this idea becomes, because perhaps the real problem is not that life lacks meaning. Perhaps the problem is that we expect from life a kind of meaning it never promised to provide. Ecclesiastes says, "There is nothing better for a person than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. This too I saw is from the hand of God, for without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? To the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth, to hand it over to the one who pleases God. This too is fleeting, a chasing after the wind." As many of you can see on this channel, one of the things I enjoy doing, although I am still very much a beginner because of my study schedule currently, is playing the piano. One thing I have noticed is that when we are playing a piece of music, we cannot focus on the wrong notes we already played, nor on the notes we have yet to play, because doing so may cause us to miss the note we are playing right now. Music demands constant presence, something musicians often call flow, a state in which the music and the musician becomes one, indistinguishable from each other. It is a state of complete presence. In the same way, we abandon the present moment in order to long for a different future or become trapped in frustration about the past. The inevitable result is failure. And this happens because, as we concluded earlier, time itself does not truly exist in our reality. It is an illusion, a trick our minds play on us, pulling us away from the presence of being. And here, there is an interesting connection to Job, whom we discussed in the previous video. Job wanted an answer to his suffering instead of facing it with complete presence. He wanted to know why it was happening, what purpose all that pain served. He wanted to escape that state. In many ways, Ecclesiastes arrives at the same diagnosis. It also observes death, injustice, suffering, the repetition of days, humanity's inability to fully comprehend reality. Both books recognize the limits of human understanding, but they follow different paths. Ecclesiastes says, "There is a time for everything, and a reason for every activity under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what was planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up searching, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace." I think about this often when I look at my own life. There were moments that, at the time, seemed completely pointless, failures, unexpected changes, closed doors, losses. But looking back, I realized that many of those moments ended up shaping exactly the person I am today. And perhaps you can find similar examples in your own life. Perhaps there is something you hated going through, but now understand was necessary. Perhaps there was a rejection that changed your direction. Perhaps there was a failure that saved you from an even greater mistake. The problem is that we can only see these things looking backwards, never looking forward. If that moment had never happened, would that really have been good? Is the proper response to despair truly to avoid it? From Job, we learn that the best thing to do is embrace suffering rather than desperately trying to force our way into a state of security and happiness. And perhaps that is exactly what Ecclesiastes is trying to teach us. Not that nothing matters, but that we are trying to make the wrong things matter. Security fades, fame fades, money fades, beauty fades, recognition fades. And even our memory will one day disappear. But that does not mean life is empty. It simply means life is temporary. It simply means that the goals we create are born from a conception of time that does not truly exist in our own world. A flower does not lose its beauty because it lasts only a few days. A sunset does not lose its value because it comes to an end. A song does not lose its beauty because it eventually finishes. So why do we demand that our lives be eternal in order to have meaning? It is not enough to know that all of these beautiful things have their own origin in the Creator, who is eternal. Perhaps the author of Ecclesiastes discovered something we have forgotten. Perhaps the value of things does not lie in their permanence, in the amount of time we assign to them. Perhaps it lies precisely in their fragility, in the fact that they will not last forever, in the fact that this moment will never return, in the fact that this day is unrepeatable. If we could control time and repeat these experiences forever, they would lose their meaning, because we would no longer receive the Creator of the only time that truly exists, the transition between the 0 and 1. Our role, therefore, is to contemplate the beauty of God, who is the eternal nothingness that generated the world we inhabit, rather than trying to alter reality, change our destiny, or force ideologies and beliefs upon it. We do not need to create meaning, because meaning already exists. It is present in everything and in nothing. We simply need to observe. Ecclesiastes says, "When I applied my mind to know wisdom and to observe the labor that is done on earth, people getting no sleep day or night, I saw all that God has done. No one can comprehend what goes on under the sun. Despite all their efforts to search it out, no one can discover its meaning. Even if the wise claim they know, they cannot truly comprehend it. I have also seen under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor bread to the wise, nor wealth to the intelligent, nor favor to the learned, but time and change happen to them all. No one knows when their hour will come. As fish are caught in a cruel net, or birds are trapped in a snare, so people are ensnared by evil times that fall unexpectedly upon them. The fool multiplies words, no one knows what is coming. Who can tell someone what will happen after them?" Thus, whenever we flee from the present in an attempt to control our lives and reach some state that we consider desirable, the result is greater anxiety. We will discuss anxiety in greater depth in another video, but I would like to talk briefly about the purpose of this channel. One of the reasons I created this channel is that as I grow older, I find myself facing more and more questions about financial, philosophical, religious and social issues. Which medical specialty should I pursue? Should I focus on service or entrepreneurship? What is the meaning of all of this? Should I spend time on hobbies or only study and make my own path? What is the nature of God? Should I build a family, and if so, how? All of these questions generate immense anxiety because they require me to define paths that depend on variables far beyond my control. I know many of you watching this struggle with the same problem, because these are not easy questions, especially in our current age when inflation continues to rise and governments systematically erode people's wealth. So, what answer have I found for dealing with this? Presence, action, creating content and expressing my thoughts, accepting that some things may go wrong, accepting that things may not unfold according to my plans. Ecclesiastes says, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for after many days you will find it again. Divide your portion among 7 or even 8, for you do not know what disaster may come upon the land. When clouds are full of water, they pour rain upon the earth. Whether a tree falls to the south or to the north, in the place where it falls, there it will lie. Whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks at the clouds will not reap. Just as you do not know the path of the wind or how the body is formed in a mother's womb, so you cannot understand the work of God, the maker of all things. Sow your seed in the morning, and at evening do not let your hands be idle, for you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, or whether both will do equally well." The truth, as Ecclesiastes shows us, is that we truly do not know what will happen. We do not control time, and therefore we do not control our lives. The only thing we can do is increase the odds and hope for the best. That is, pray that our efforts will be recognized by God and that He will do what He believes is best for us. Regardless of the outcome I achieve with this channel, I will continue producing content because it is something I genuinely enjoy doing. It is work that brings me happiness, just as I find joy in playing the piano, studying medicine, and studying philosophy as a whole. Ecclesiastes says, "You who are young, be happy while you are young, and let your heart give you joy in the days of your youth. Follow the ways of your heart, and whatever your eyes see. But know that for all these things God will bring you into judgment. So then, banish anxiety from your heart and cast off the troubles of your body, for youth and vigor are fleeting." So what if nothing you do really matters? Perhaps that is the wrong question. Perhaps the right question is this: what if the fact that nothing lasts forever is precisely what makes everything so precious? Because at the end of Ecclesiastes, after questioning wisdom, pleasure, work, money, and even the meaning of existence itself, the author arrives at a surprisingly simple conclusion: live, be grateful, fear God, do good, enjoy the time you have been given, not because you will live forever, but precisely because you will not. And perhaps that is where meaning finally appears, not as something we discover at the end of the journey, but as something that has been walking beside us the entire time. The text concludes, "Not only was the teacher wise, but he also imparted knowledge to the people. He pondered and searched out and set in order many proverbs. The teacher searched to find just the right words, and what he wrote was upright and true. The words of the wise are like golds, their collected sayings like firmly embedded nails, given by one shepherd. Be warned, my son, of anything in addition to them. Of making many books there is no end, and much studies where is the body. Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil."